In 2022, Springfield, Missouri is ranked 11th among U.S. cities for violent personal and property crime. I bought this small home in 1995 and did not know it was then considered the meth capital of the world. I came here from another state to join my parents, where I had worked as an herbalist and a buyer at a health food store and a freelance journalist specializing in radioactive and chemical pollution. My volunteer work included sitting 3 years on 2 city committees as an environmentalist. In one, I was chosen by the mayor, and the other by the city citizens. In Springfield, I continued my life work as an artist, avid gardener, writer, photographer, and poet. For 20 years, I earned a living here at a national retail chain, receiving nominations for Employee of the Year in the first 3 months, and again 4 years later when I won the award out of hundreds of employees. My art has been shown and awarded in Watercolor USA, MOAC, and Delta shows at Springfield Art Museum and Arkansas Arts Center for decades. I am a member of the USA Watercolor Honor Society. Today I work with the City of Springfield to certify my yard as a natural habitat. Organic, zero-scape yards with shade are an asset for any U.S. city because they preserve water and assist wildlife to live naturally. I only tell you this so you know who I am. In 2016, everything changed. Screens were torn off south basement windows. At the same week, at 1 a.m., I was awakened by drilling of holes into the steel siding of my home. I called police the next day. The officer asked, "Is there a reason people want to get into your home?" The next police report I asked for was when my left eye was shot out with a laser point from the direction of a north rental neighbor. Since 2016, large Madonna statues, metal rabbit statues, and a small garden ornaments were stolen. Walking to and from work, I found flowers torn up and thrown to the sidewalk. Who would do this? The privacy fences I built at the property lines for protection were suddenly hit by vehicles. Why was this happening? Then high levels of dangerous magnetic frequencies started at my home's south side. When that rental neighbor moved, the danger levels stopped on the south and then began along the north side of my home. They continue until this day. I called the Springfield Fire Department, Captain Pennington, for a free home safety inspection with a Geiger counter and an EMF reader, please. After he hung up, he called the SPD to investigate me, saying that I was, quote, a person of interest. The same year, 2016 House Oversight Committee, South Carolina State Rep. Trey Gowdy, and Homeland Security agent only agreed on one thing, that the quote listed U.S. citizens in the United States were denied their rights without their knowledge. This listing makes McCarthyism look like a day in the park. 2 officers, under Pennington's urging, came to my yard. One had his hand on a stun gun, yelling, "What's the problem?" I spoke with them calmly 10 minutes, then asked politely that they leave. That day, the first incident report on me was made, and under description I was listed as a person of interest. Then the Area Council of Aging was called to place me in a 96-hour evaluation hold, but the council refused to do so. 3 months later, my dog Roxanne died of her radiation injuries. She was a small dachshund and the kindest, most intelligent dog you would ever want to know. So I bought an EMF reader to document dangerous levels of magnetic and microwave radiation in my own home. Why is the remote 24/7 DEW torture of U.S. citizens top secret? Senator Jeanne Shaheen asked U.S. Director of National Intelligence Haynes. Shaheen wants all reports declassified of U.S. DEW attacks inside the borders of the United States. For decades, U.S. citizens reporting the same injuries as Cuban diplomats were placed in 96-hour evaluation holds or worse. In the past, the U.S. has experimented on its citizens covertly without their consent. Is this happening today? I asked the city utilities to stop by with EMF readers. 2 men came, and their meters and my own were different from each other, which was good. One man had his turned off on 0 the entire time. Why? The others spiked to danger zones in the kitchen and the front hall, where there was no electricity on at the time. At one point he thought that the statue he scanned was radioactive. I picked up the statue and moved it. The reading was the same. I took photos of CU danger levels and my own, and I sent them to the Attorney General of Missouri, Joshua Hawley. Here is 6.20 milligauss at 60 hertz, which is very high, and here is 5.60 milligauss at 60 hertz, and mine is reading on 03 magnetic at 8. These are all very high danger levels in my home. Joshua Hawley, the Attorney General of Missouri, wrote back and said he would assist in finding out where danger levels of radiation came from, and for months data between CU's lawyer, Mr. Black, A.G. Hawley, and myself transpired. I asked for a police report when my home was broken into again. The padlock was removed and put back haphazardly. I took photos. The screws were gone and there were only nails. An SPD officer agreed to a recorded conversation, yet in the 20 minutes he spoke, he used the words paranoid, delusional, and imagining things. So I filed an internal affairs report on 5 SPD officers who since 2016 allegedly disrespected and intimidated a homeowner reporting crime. Chief Paul Williams shelved the IA as a miscellaneous. The same day, Attorney General of Missouri stopped assistance, sending a letter noting that both CU and my facts were valid, so there could be no conclusion. Yet CU's Mr. Black never addressed the photos of CU's own high danger readings filed in the report. The next day, 2 SPD officers yelled my name at a back gate while I was gardening. Specifically, they said to have me sign into their iPad, for they were concerned about me. Smiling, I refused. They angrily left, telling me that they would, quote, hotline a 96-hour evaluation hold. But it never happened again. A week later, a liaison for the SPD dropped by with 2 SPD hiding in the driveway behind a bush and a fence. The men were quite large and in broad daylight. You could see them. The woman and I walked to the front porch. I asked if I could record our conversation. She agreed. Then she advised me to never file another internal affairs report because I was imagining things. The SPD officers helping me make reports refused to look at the Attorney General's data or the photo evidence of break-ins. I asked this woman, whose name was Melissa, if she would be interested in looking at the reports also, and she said no. Why? Former Chief of U.S. Interest Section in Cuba told NPR that U.S. diplomats not only endured DEW attacks, but home break-ins, turning off electricity, rearranging things, emptying water tanks, anything to get at morale. The same is true for U.S. civilians. And in Springfield, criminal gangs use DEWs, causing lawlessness to proliferate. At a hearing before the Police Civilian Review Board, I asked that my internal affairs report be reopened and the SPD officers sanctioned with educational classes on directed energy weapons and learning how to respect residents reporting unusual crime. Right before the hearing, the only SPD officer sitting on the board for years was replaced, and after the hearing, the board sent a nice letter concluding I was a good person and Springfield was so diversified, everyone needed to work together. Never was the disrespect, alleged disrespect, or anything else addressed, and the policemen were not educated about directed energy weapons. A new south rental neighbor asked to trim a pear tree 2 feet off my south property line. My hands were injured. I couldn't do it myself. Back from the store, I heard a chainsaw and saw a carport full of limbs and a tree half gone. I asked how the 2 men could do that. The bearded one yelled. The man with the chainsaw talked with me, and I asked him to please stop trimming. So I was surprised months later when, without permission, I returned from the library to hear the chainsaw and find 3 people working at the pear tree without limbs, but only 5 at the rooftop. I was so horrified I exclaimed, "My God, what have you done? You destroyed the tree." The 3 people cursed and flapped their arms, yelling at me. A bearded man came an inch from my face. Wanting to leave, I said, "God bless you," loudly, and meant it, for these people were clearly not the sharpest tacks in the shed. This time the man with the chainsaw yelled above his friends, "You can't bless me. You don't know God. I go to church. I know God." A woman walked through them very quietly and said to me, "The pear tree should not have been planted there." But for 20 years I thought to myself, the pear tree and rental neighbors were fine. Today I'm in the process of having this tree taken down. San Diego's inventor Woody Norris created, produced, and sold handheld and large DEWs inside U.S. borders to General Dynamics for multi-million-dollar contracts. In 2003, the New York Times interview, he laughingly bragged, "DEWs instantly cause loss of equilibrium, vomiting, migraines, and really we pretty much can pick our ailment," unquote. DEWs human traffic targets because every neurological aspect of the human body is affected. Nothing is sacred and nothing is private. Theft in the front and backyard was so bad, if it wasn't nailed down, it disappeared. The next police report I filed was when my home was broken into and $1,000 in books and Grandpa's silver and other items stolen. The front door was wide open when a friend came to cut the grass. After calling 911, he saw 4 SPD officers arrive, enter, and stay in my home 2 hours. When 3 officers took off, the 4th said, "You can go now. I'm heading back inside to take photos." My friend left. What were the 4 officers doing inside my home for 2 hours? And how many photos were taken without my presence? When at the police station, I asked for a burglary report, but none was found in the computer. An officer kept asking me questions and walking back and forth to a room, relaying my information. 10 minutes later, a report popped up with lots of errors. Former NASA aerospace engineer, then Missouri State Rep Jim Guest, wrote in the 2007 legislature, quote, "For help with the many constituents in our country being affected unjustly by electronic weapons torture and covert harassment groups. Serious privacy rights violations and physical injuries are caused by these groups and their use of so-called non-lethal weapons on men, women, and even children." I was never notified my home was broken into by the SPD. There was no investigation done, no fingerprints taken, and no neighbors questioned. Only 2 photos of the front door were in the file. 2020, Supervisor Detective Lobb agreed on recording a 20-minute conversation about the burglary. Here is a 3-minute clip. And unfortunately, when I'm nervous, I tend to stutter. So when crime is not attended to by the police in the area, and all due respect, my uncle was a policeman. I wanted to be a policeman my whole life. All my men relatives and some female relatives were in the military, okay? Fought in all the wars. So you're talking to a very patriotic person here. I would think that when crime is not attended to, it just gets worse, don't you?
I agree. We try to allocate our resources the best we can to prevent crime in the city.
And you don't know Springfield, Missouri is rated the 11th most dangerous city in the United States right now. The year 2020 by CBS News and the vacation destination.
I came here talk about the burglary. I didn't review any stats.
It is just my opinion, sir, that the lack of respect offered to me as a homeowner when I suggested that my home was broken into twice before and called for reports is just my opinion, because no attention was paid to that the crime has risen at my home itself. Because the criminals know nothing's going to get done. Don't you think that could be the case?
I think the problem, there's a bigger issue. I think it goes beyond just that.
What's the issue?
Maybe the judicial system is flooded. Maybe there's not enough room in the jail to hold people for long periods of time. Maybe the probation and parole issue needs to be tweaked a little bit.
But respectfully, sir?
But, I didn't study any stats. I didn't research that. I'm providing my personal opinion.
I know, and you're very, very kind as a supervisor. Yes, sir. You're very kind as a supervisor to talk with me, a supervisor of detectives. But if what does an officer telling me when I'm reporting a breaking and entering, telling me multiple times that I'm paranoid, delusional, and imagining things, what does that have to do with the judicial system?
I'm just saying that there's a lot of issues that can create problems inside the community as far as why crime exists, why does it continue to go on. I don't think just one piece of the pie is responsible for the entire problem. I was just suggesting that there could be a bunch of different issues that it's creating.
Thank you, Supervisor Detective Laub, for talking with me. One snowy day I heard tires skid and talk and laughter. I ran to the backyard to watch as my chain link fence was hit twice by a vehicle. Since then, I have strung a 5-foot-tall welded fence down the entire south property line. This fence offers shade because I grow honeysuckle on it, but at the time I decided to make a stand. I went ahead and I purchased 3 stealth cameras from Academy Sports, and I put them at 3 property lines, set on motion activation, 10-second video. This is from the first week. On this particular south property line, the camera was motion activated when a person went to their red truck, presumably to go to work. The next video, a man drives a bike at the property line looking at the camera. Then he enters his garage. Then inside the garage, he decides to come out again and look at the camera. And this is all at my property line, 10-second motion activated video. There's a big broom here with a long handle, and in this video at the property line, a man has a iron rod in his hand that must be too short. And in this video, the man has the broom and is coming over the property line 4 feet in to hit the privacy fence from my chain link fence, and I believe he's hitting it. Looks like it. The camera goes to photo mode and starts taking photos under the fence where it dropped. This right here is a wraparound headlight and a grill, and above are 2 faces now, not just one. The camera's lifted off the ground. Now it's at my chain link fence. Now it's at the garage door area of another person's property, and there's the broom. The person holding the camera can't figure out how it works, so they smash it, leaving the camera card in, and place the camera near my front door. I find it an hour later and call the police. I take a picture of it in July of that year to make my first video. I couldn't find the videos at first inside. The way the camera is set up, I could only find photos, and the police said that that couldn't help their case. What I did notice after picking up the camera, however, was the gentleman in question then went door to door, speaking with neighbors. One, he spoke so loudly that I could hear what he said. He said that he was in contact with a certain SPD officer and that he would like neighbors to work as a community to institute proceedings against me. So he was hoping all the neighbors could contact the SPD officer he was in contact with. Since 2016, I'm at around 8 on the north side of my home, set on 0 to 3 magnetic at all times. This pottery is iridescent and fired underground. I gave a painting in trade for it. When it was kicked in, I put a Madonna in it. The United Nations and U.S. states of Minnesota, Maine, and Massachusetts have laws prohibiting DEWs as weapons of mass destruction used by terrorists. SPD officers have told me directed energy weapons do not exist, but laws are only made about weapons that exist in the U.S. and are owned by civilians. Just Google directed energy weapons for sale, and anyone can buy them. Handheld DEWs are any shape and size. Some resemble flashlights, others dinner plates. Most are military programs uploaded into iPhones and computers, triangulating with cell towers and a human's EMP. I have seen both devices. The one that was a military program in an iPhone, a woman leaned over from another table in a restaurant and she showed me the face of her phone. You could see every table in the restaurant and a map of the restaurant, and the table I was sitting at was in red. After returning from a trip this June, I photographed my privacy fence in the backyard where a section of dog ears had been broken off the 4x4 when someone stood on the chain link fence behind it an inch away and then put their leg over it, attempting to get access into my yard. After taking this photo, an hour later, a young person knocked on my front door asking if I would throw their ball back into their yard. I said of course I would, and a bearded man stood behind the child. I shut the front door and walked past the broken fence in my backyard, and I found the ball, threw it into their yard by the drive, and both thanked me. Former U.S. Navy officer David Voits became targeted after reporting to a commanding officer that he found a domestic covert Navy DEW program that tortures civilians experimentally. The Army, Air Force, and Marines also have these programs. This year, one night, a river rock by my front door was sliced in half like a knife going through a hard-boiled egg. The rock next to it was very large, and it was shattered into 10 pieces. What kind of energy does this? I collect rocks. These two I found the next morning as I was saying my rosaries before beginning my day. There are now 4 cameras attached at a roof and aimed at property lines. Interestingly, when microwave and magnetic radiation spike, I look in the camera screen and the computer screen, and any people visible immediately move out of camera sight. I have recorded this phenomenon many times. The Architectural Digest magazine show many modern homes with corrugated steel lining the interiors for light and for shine. I put these corrugated panels by my beds because they cut the microwave and magnetic radiation in half. September 2018, a Pentagon teleconference, 4 U.S. State Department doctors concluded that the U.S.-Cuban diplomats did not suffer physical or mental illness, but directed energy weapon and neuroweapon injuries. Well, the same is true for civilians. In 2021, U.S. Bill S-1828 was passed, compensating government employees with DEW brain, heart, and qualifying neuroweapon injuries. Civilians were not included in the bill. Why? This is my door on my house now. I have 3 padlocks, I have a bolt lock, and I have a doorknob lock. Every year for the past 4 years, I speak before the Springfield City Council and Mayor asking directed energy weapons be included in Springfield, Missouri gun laws, please, but to no avail. Martin Luther King Jr. said, there comes a time when silence is betrayal. Well, that time is now in the United States. Authorities and targeted individuals need to speak out. I still garden at my home, and I also paint and submit paintings to contests at art museums. This is my home today. I have painted a sign above my door that says, God gives me justice, and I believe that. Archangel Michael, defend us in battle while presenting evidence in writing, photos, and words before our countrymen. This is a prayer I would like to read for targeted individuals everywhere. Archangel Michael, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke the devil, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly hosts, Archangel Michael, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. God bless you, and please share this video. I live in Springfield, Missouri. Thank you for watching.